Hello, everybody. Today, I'm going to talk about the Gandhari Buddhist manuscript. It is related to my academic studies. I want to do some report about it. Actually, Gandhari Buddhist manuscript was actually studied by a couple of the scholars before it can become a well-known fact. But it was particularly important that at the 1995, somebody brought a group of texts, a manuscript, went to a British library, and then British library in turn asked some scholars to decipher what these manuscripts were about. So, and then they asked Professor Salman. He is a specialist in the ancient script by studying inscriptions, by studying Indian ancient scripts, inscriptions. So he is in charge of studying this group of manuscripts. And at the time, it was at the time of 1995, if I remember correctly. And then I went to the school of where the Professor Solomon was. That is the University of Washington. So the Professor Solomon led a group of people, his colleague, Professor Collie Cox, and the students of both professors, and form a group called Curiosity Club to study the manuscript. How were these manuscripts found? The first group of manuscripts that I was just talking about, found at 1995. The place is unknown, so nobody knows where it is from because it's from black market. Then soon after that, the second group of manuscripts were brought to the scholars as well. This group of texts was said to be found in northeastern Afghanistan, near the Kabul River area. It was found in a basement, put in a jar, and in a corner of the basement of a ruined temple in the northeastern Afghanistan. It at the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. And then how we study this manuscript. Some technician in the British Library use a very high advanced camera and take a photo of this manuscript, one after another, and then put into computer a digital image. And then somebody from our group use Photoshop to work on this manuscript. It can make it bigger, closer, in order to be able to read it, see it clearly, and those broken pieces can be moved around to fit whether it is better, where it can be fit better, cut and paste here and there, move around, so to study it. And because of the situation of the manuscript is very fragmentary. So it is involve a lot of difficulty to read it, to read them, and to understand them. And besides the physical situation, the language is also new to us. It's called Gandhari. And Gandhari is the daughter language of Sanskrit. Well, the Professor Solomon is a Sanskrit professor. So, the language Gandhari is called Prakrit. And Prakrit is a everyday language we use in a day, every day. And Sanskrit is a literary language, but it derived from Sanskrit. So both are related, but not identical. And in the spelling of the Gandhari language the script. It said that it was invented by a person called Sravasti. That's why the script is called Sravasti. And the way of spelling is, for example, like a Kanjiang, a double S, but there's no way to write double S, just write single S. And then there's no way to indicate the diacritic of a long vowel. So all the vowel is all the same, but you can tell which is long, which is short, because if you know the language. So something like that. So the reading, so first of all, able to read what it is there in the manuscript, because it's all fragmentary. The second one, it requires a lot of knowledge about Buddhism and a lot of knowledge about the language in order to be able to read it. But at the same time, we are learning the language. So it is very difficult. And so if only we can find parallel, it makes the reading much smoother. So if we can find a phrase and we are able to understand what it means, then we can quickly check whether we can find another thing, another reading in like Pali or Chinese, and see if we can find parallels. So it's very time consuming, very time consuming to study at the early stage of these manuscripts. Okay, I only talk about the first group, and the second group was soon after found, and brought to our group, our team, as well. So the second group is not so. The manuscript were intact almost, and the text will, the birch bark that was written on was almost intact, so it's kept well in the jar, and the writing nice and neat. So it's easier to read, and besides, we are able to identify a lot of the text because it's from Agama Sutra, and we can identify them quickly, so the reading are much easier. Then come to the date of these manuscripts. These are very old. Through a scientific technique like carbon-14. So they are able to say, those scientists, those technicians are able to tell that it's about the range of after the beginning of the Common Era, like 1st to 2nd centuries. And the purpose of studying these texts is not just for a small circle of people. So after we studied, we want to publish it. So we have a series of publications about these texts. And the content of these two groups of manuscripts in the first group of the texts, the manuscripts, they are more we so-called small vehicle, the mainstream Buddhism texts. Like there are texts contain verses we call Anavatabhagata. That is the Gatha is a song from heart poem, and it is a story. From 500 arhat, their previous life stories, like that, and there are songs related to solitary Buddha, saying their particular way of practice, something like that. So, and a lot of texts, I'm talking about the first group now, is about Abhidhamma texts. And it's very obscure, the reading, it's very difficult to understand who are saying what, so we get lost. But I think Professor Kalikas is working on this Abhidhamma text, and probably I think her work is close to the completion. And the second group, the content of the second group are almost all. It's about Agama texts. Do you know Agama? It's we call. Actually, it was taught by the Shakyamuni Buddha, but it kind of in contrary to Mahayana texts. Okay, in contrary to Mahayana texts and those early texts. So we usually like the Pali texts are Agama texts. Yeah, the Pali. The impact of these manuscripts come to surface, and that the almost worldwide well-known fact now, because Professor Salman has been invited by various well-known universities all around the world to talk about these manuscripts. So this is almost like a new branch of Buddhist studies now. So almost if you do not know about Gandhari Buddhist text, that you probably is now. Yeah. I think that well, people ask, do you know anything new about the Buddhism by studying these texts? Our fundamental doctrine are all remain the same. Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Noble Path, everything is all the same, just like this text we are studying nowadays. But there are some small, I would say small, but thing that we maybe is not known to us, like a Buddha lineage. So Buddha lineage, like there's, we know there's a prediction from like Vipassana Buddha. He predicted that Bodhisattva in front of him, that you will be the Shakyamuni Buddha after such year later. And this is prediction, right? And so through the prediction, one to another and to another, like, has a lineage. So this kind of thing, I never heard before. So there's this kind of knowledge come to us that was flourished in that northwest India at the time. Well, before the discovery of these texts, there's only one that language that is close to the Buddha's time. That is the Pali, canon. And we treat the Pali canon as like almost authoritative. That is Buddha's words. But nowadays, we have another text that was in the Indian language, spoken by the Buddha. So we have like a multiple and more than one authoritative text. But in the way, we don't want to say that, this is words of the Buddha. We almost treat that we want to say the multiple origin, not just only one, the single one is the words of Buddha, but multiple origin of the Buddha's words. It's like when we say something, when we see something, several people see something happen on the street, and then these people, they go home and then tell their neighbors, friends, family about what was going on the street. Everyone tell the same story, but in a different way. But then you will say, who is legitimate than the other? So we kind of recognize all these different origin of the same story. Well, this is the new way of looking at the Buddha's words nowadays.
Are there different religions or just different schools of Buddhism?
Different school, not different religion. Yeah, it's all Buddhism. It's all Buddhist. So, I mean, who wrote it down? We are not able to tell who, but a group of people were composing. First of all, the Buddhist texts were orally transmit orally from teacher to students. But later on this, I think they are kind of professional group of people. They are responsible to memorize these texts and then pass it down for each a collection of books.
So it's more a sutra than a treatise that somebody wrote?
Oh, you are talking about treatise? Yeah.
That's considered sutra?
No, treatise are commentary. Comment.
Is it a commentary treatise thing, or is it considered a sutra?
It can both. I mean, for the first group, there are quite a lot of Abhidhamma texts. They are, they can say, they are commentary on Buddhist, on sutra, on scripture, doctrinal points. They are commentary, and they have writer, right? They have composer, but we don't. There's no way to know that. We just have the text.
The agamas are sutras.
Yes, yeah. People might ask about Mahayana, but only, I mean, after these first two groups, and actually they are not just the group in Seattle study the Gandhari, and there are groups in like nowadays like Germany and in Pakistan and all over almost many in some certain circle of scholars. They have they also study the Gandhari text as well. So it's widespread now. And more manuscripts were brought to surface and into the scholarly studies from individual donors. People probably keep it separate, privately. Now they just bring it up. So now we have a branch called Gandhari Buddhism in Buddhology. Let's talk about the Northwest Indian Buddhism. So now when we see the Northwest, I mean the North Pakistan and Northeast Afghanistan, where we have the two Buddhas standing before, right? Before the Taliban's bombing. It was a very flourished center for Buddhism. At the ancient time, that when the very famous Chinese pilgrim, Xuanzang, they all passed through that part and enter the plain of India. So and very famous center for Sanskrit studies. So actually, be culture rich of culture. So I was talking about that with the Venerable children. That there's hundreds of caves behind the two Buddhas standing there. They were dwelled by monks. They meditate there. So you can imagine that the Buddhism was so much flourished at that time, the place. But nowadays it's totally different. So we call it impermanent, really. Okay, thank you.